Hey everybody, Isaiah Colton here with another episode of Renegade CEO podcast where I try to bring you really awesome stories of people that have started out at a professional, either in real estate or performance-based business, and they've just made a decision to become an investor slash entrepreneur to take their personal career to the next level. And we hope that these stories inspire you to consider doing the same thing. And I'm really excited about today's guest because Matt Drouin made that decision some time ago and has not only had tremendous success in commercial real estate, but also teaching other investors how to do the same thing. And he's got some really amazing stories, a story to share with you, which I can't wait for him to tell. And Matt, thanks for taking the time to join me on my podcast here today. Really appreciate it.
Hey, I'm honored and pleased to be here. So thanks for having me on.
So Matt, my first question to you is why the hell real estate? Like, where did it come from? Like, what's the backstory on that? Like, what got you interested in real estate?
I mean, it's not really an interesting story. It was by accident.
Okay.
I grew up watching my father, who had started real estate as a side hustle, real estate sales. And his full-time hustle, his front hustle, was as a general laborer at Genesee Brewery. And,
no way.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw a guy working nights and weekends, doing the whole agent thing, and I distinctly remember being a kid and being like, I do not want to do that, because it was like I had a lot of like agents at like the North Lake Pittsford office. I mean, that's where I started off. Like when I got my license, for instance, by accident. By
accident? Tell us about that. Tell us about that before you move forward. That's interesting.
Well, I guess maybe I get a little bit ahead of myself in revealing the conclusion of this like one chapter. But I remember like there was agents that my dad would pay to like babysit me at the office while he went out and went on listing appointments and showing buyers around houses and opening doors and that sort of thing. And I would walk over to Pittsford Sutherland High School for let's say like a concert, like for a band. I was also in chorus and that sort of thing. Always remember and if my dad did drop me off, it was always like an hour early, so I'd be there like wandering around the school hallways, getting chased down by like janitors and that sort of thing. And when I would go up on stage with all the other students, like I would like look out into the crowd and like be like, I'm wondering if my dad will be there. And usually he wasn't. All right. And then I'd always have to have a friend drive me, like a friend's like parent, like drive me home, or I'd have to wait like a half an hour after it, after the performance concluded to have him be there. So that was really like, kind of like the foundation, like core memory of what I associated real estate sales with, which was like not being present.
Right.
So I
think a lot of our audience can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I did know I wanted to be rich. And the reason why I wanted to be rich is because this lifestyle my dad created for himself, I mean, it drove my parents apart. So they got divorced. My dad was married 4 times while he was still alive. And it was always going back to like a lack of money as being the reason, because money's kind of like air. You start to notice it when there's not a lot around it. Like, I remember I was in a training one time. It's like this guy across the stage was like, if I covered your mouth and pinched your nose off, like what's the first thing you'd start thinking about, right? It would be air. So I thought my path was going to be, this, I was always infatuated with Wall Street kind of movies and that sort of thing, like the Gordon Gekko types. And I thought I was like, okay, all right, that guy looks like he's got it made. So I'm going to go on like Wall Street. All right. So I'm going to go to college. I'm going to graduate in 2006. And then, all the investment banking firms like, Bear Stearns and Morgan Stanley and Lehman Brothers were going to be scrambling to get my like world-class talent as like an unexperienced like graduate, like B+ student out of a liberal arts school. It was a complete delusion. But it was the vision I had for myself. And I got my first like real slice of humble pie when I graduated Geneseo, and I was like applying, shout out to those people who had to apply on Monster back in the day. Do you remember Monster?
I know. Oh my gosh.
To all these like Wall Street firms, like crickets, like, these like, several page applications that were like, like a colonoscopy, like that you'd go on with no response. And the best job I could find, before the student loans started kicking in, was as a part-time bank teller at Chase Bank. And here I was, like, working in the village of Pittsford. I always had this sort of inferiority complex because I went to a school where, like, my 16-year-old friends would, like, drive into the school parking lot with like a brand new Lexus. And my parents were always like, they were house poor. They scraped every dollar they had to, like, buy the house they had in Pittsford. And, and I was just like, and, now here I was graduating. Best job I could find was a part-time bank teller. And I was, like, cashing, paychecks for, my former high school colleagues that, went to, like, fancy, like, universities, like, Yale and Dartmouth and all that sort of thing. And it was just absolutely just like, and I was stuck inside, right, behind a desk. Not very mobile, right? You're basically, the most amount of mobility you're having is, like, walking back and forth between, like, your desk and a printer. So I developed this, like, really, really huge, like, I don't know, resentment towards this job. It was the first time in my life where I was like, this is going to be my, like, life. Like, maybe if I stick at this thing, I'm going to wind up, like, next to Jamie Dimon, like, in the C-suite at, like, JP Morgan Chase. I couldn't stick it out. So I was complaining to my dad about this situation, and he was like, all right, well, if you hate your job so much, why don't you get your real estate license, and I'll show you the ropes. And so I would.
Were you hesitant to do that at all because of your dad, or was it like because you had experienced, like, what was going on, quote unquote corporate job, that it was like a no brainer for you? Like, what was your thought process behind that?
Well, the old adage, like, no pain, no sale. It's like no pain, no transition. Right. So I was just like, I would have like jumped off the top of a building to get out of that situation. So I think it would have been, like, if my dad said, like, oh yeah, you can, get a job at Genesee Brewery, like, slinging around kegs and that sort of thing. Like, I would have taken that.
You probably would have done it. It was that because you hated it that much.
Yeah. So I did that, and it was like, the first time my dad and I got to, like, work together in a professional capacity, and I didn't really like it that much, to be honest with you. My dad, I was like, all right, Dad, I need business, right? This is 100% commission only, and he's like, okay, there's the computer, there's a phone. And go call expired listings, and go call, FSBOs, for sale by owners. Like, that's how you're going to get business. Go to open houses. And I really wasn't a great prospector. I was really timid. I'd never really done, like, cold calling and cold sales and that sort of thing. So yeah,
nobody's born out of the womb to want a cold call, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I did find, though, that I really. The one area of the market that was really neglected, especially with, like, the Nothingo Pittsford office, was the city of Rochester. It was low transaction price homes. And that's kind of like where I developed my niche in working with investors that were buying, like, grinder city properties, like on, like, Bismarck and Remington and Avenue D, like all the alphabet streets, for like $30,000-$40,000. So I started occupying that space because there wasn't a lot of competition in it, because it's like, all right, these are, like, kind of like table scraps that nobody really pays attention to. And I was able to save up about between that and also my part-time job at a liquor store. Shout out to Country Club Wine and Spirits. I was able to save up $16,000.
I'll have to go check them out. We'll have to go support them.
Yeah, not in business anymore. Rest in peace.
Oh, they're not? Oh, okay.
So I saved up $16,000, and my dad was like, all right, well, I know you probably enjoy, like, living rent free in my house, but it wasn't my, dream to have a 20-year-old something live in my house. So he's like, you can either get a job, get an apartment with your friends and pay rent, or you can buy a small multifamily property and live in one of the units, rent out the other ones. And I like the idea of not paying rent, so that's the direction I went in, which was kind of another accidental thing. I think that if my dad didn't really push me out of the nest, then I probably would have never gone that route. There's a whole lesson there too, I think, that for another podcast, but of just having that little nudge by somebody that gets us out of our comfort zone, right? Oh, absolutely. So, yeah. I didn't like it at the time, right? I was actually, like, I was like, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, I just started, like, getting my feet from under me, and now you're, like, pushing me out. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me. And during this whole time, as I was a realtor, kind of, like, not really liking the job, and I was just like, day trading stocks, like in like, I had like a couple grand, right? Like it's like,
Right.
there's not much you're going to make from that. But I was like, I always had this thing. I was like, I need to find out how to be rich. And so it was that one moment that I closed in that 4-family property, owner occupied, closed in the middle of the month. And I magically got like $1,800 in rent checks in my mailbox. And it was almost like criminal because I know how many properties or how hard I had to work to like earn a commission selling like a duplex on Avenue D to earn $1,600. So I was like, okay, this is the thing. And that's really when I started, doubling down on that and finding real estate investment as a tool to rapidly increase your wealth and also your income.
So you got that, and then like what was the next step in your mind? Like, did you see yourself immediately getting into like bigger commercial deals, or was that like a stepping stone to work your way up? Or like that's a bit, because that's a big decision for a lot of investors, right? And I know you got into some bigger commercial deals. I think you said you have a huge portfolio right now. I think you were just recently on some pretty famous local podcasts because of some of the things you've done, but there was a whole bunch of decisions in between there. So like, what was the next step for you, for all the people that are like, should I be an investor? Should I do this? Is commercial in my future? Is it not, etc.?
I guess the next step was like, I knew I got bit by the bug, and I just spent every single penny that I had to buy that first property. And the amount that I was saving via like not having to pay a mortgage and that sort of thing, it was going to be like several years before I could buy my next investment property. So it's like, okay, I have this like constraint, right? Theory of constraints, capital being a bottleneck. And so I had to figure out a way on how to scale this thing without having my own capital as a bottleneck. So I had, there was a property that was like falling into the ground, like a few doors down from where I lived. I approached, cold that property owner, approached them. Really long story short, got the property under contract for $80,000. It's a 4-family property in the Park Avenue neighborhood. It was a nightmare property. It was probably it was the worst in the neighborhood.
Learn a lot from it. learn a lot from it.
So I got under contract for $80,000. This deal needed like $60,000, like bare minimum in terms of just to get it like occupied, not like much less like like actually like decent living conditions. And so I was like, okay, how do I do this? I got the property under contract. I brought the contract to my dad. I was like, hey, can I borrow $80,000 to buy this house? And he's like, dude, I've been living paycheck to paycheck, unbeknownst to you. Like, and I'm playing catch up, so it's not going to be for me. But there's these people called hard money lenders or private money lenders that offer like bridge financing and private financing for these deals. And if you buy a deal right, then they can finance the acquisition and with no down payment, and also the, maybe some renovations and that sort of thing. So I brought this deal over to Phil Nothagle, who owned Nothagle Home Securities at the time. Did these like bridge lending stuff. So I was able to borrow $140,000 from him, close in the deal, and then use that the excess proceeds to rehab the house, like place it in service, stabilize it, move in there, and then I brought it to Canada National Bank. The property reappraised for $180,000. Fast forward to today, the property is worth like $450,000. I sold it last year. But
congratulations! Awesome.
Yeah, but I was like, okay, I can scale this thing, and then now my next constraint is finding deals, right? So then I went on, the war-path of just acquiring more and more deals. Midstream, this whole thing, I lost both my parents in my 20s due to health reasons, and that was like a major wake-up call for me. And yeah, and I was like, all right, this is like, life is not permanent. Tomorrow's not promised. So I was like ingrained with these sort of like traumatic experiences very early on that I guess like people aren't able to earn that type of like perspective until later on in life, until you've gone through it yourself, through like, losing your parents. To develop this sense of urgency. So this is kind of like what was the fuel to my fire for going on the warpath and acquiring as many properties as I possibly could, because my goal was to become financially independent, replace my income by the time I was 40. So I did direct mail campaigns. That was my chosen thing there. Used hard money lenders to take the properties down, rehab them. So then at the end of the day, I'd have no money into the deals. So I was able to eliminate my capital's bottleneck and also the deal flow's bottleneck. So by my 33rd birthday, I was able to replace my income, and I was out, right? I was out of the rat race.
I love that. 33 was the year, huh? So that's awesome. And how many years ago was that?
Oh God, I'm 41 right now. So my wife is a math educator, so she would kill me. But you do the math on that one.
There
It
you
was
go.
a while
There you
ago.
go.
But
How did
yeah,
that feel? How did that feel when you hit that milestone? How did it, like, was it like, oh, what's next, or did it feel good?
it was. You thought it would been like euphoria, but I had the most like insane moment of depression or
Mm.
season of depression after that because this is one thing I was focused on, had this burning desire for every day, thinking about it every day for years, right? 11 years.
Mm.
And I finally hit it and I was like, okay, what's next? This I I pursued this thing at great cost to my mental health because I was at one point in time closing one to two deals a month because it took me 11 years, 25 properties, 76 doors to create this outcome. And I started this journey when I was single, got married midstream of this whole thing, and I was like, I cannot do this journey again to replace my wife's income because it was my goal to spend my life, my life with my wife partner, being able to go backpacking through Europe for 2 months at a time. But
Sure.
that wasn't going to be a thing if she was stuck in a math classroom teaching high school math at Hilton High School. So I was like, okay, I always knew I wanted to be big or do big deals, but that created more financial impact in terms of the outcome. But I had this self-limiting belief that I had to be big to go big, that I had to have enough experience to go big, for the universe or God to give me permission to do those bigger deals. And so that was when I decided to throw that self-limiting belief out the window, and I closed on my first larger deal. It was $1 million deal. It's kind of funny, it was an off-market deal, and I actually offered under $1 million, even though I knew $1 million was a great deal for the property, just because I was intimidated by the extra comma on it, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But I had to raise the money for the deal. I had to raise $300,000 from private investors. Took that deal down full circle. I pushed the valuation of that property from $1 million to $1.6 million in 12 months. Refinanced the property, paid my investors back to $300,000, and then that one deal alone added $600,000 to her net worth and $60,000 a year, replaced my wife's income, which wasn't hard because she was a teacher, right?
So if I heard you
Yeah.
if I heard you right though, you in that one deal did what took you up until you were 20 in your 20s to 33 because of a shift in your thinking. Is that
Correct. Yeah.
because of the removal of that limiting belief? It's so interesting. It's so interesting about the topic of limiting beliefs, how much it actually costs. One of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and I don't know if you saw Alex Hormozy's book launch or watched it or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a little segment in there about which you and I have heard before in the past, but it just hit me differently. It's like when he had his breakthrough, it was a direct correlation with who he was surrounding himself with that changed his limiting beliefs. And there was a story in there that I heard afterwards that he told about how he paid Grant Cardone an insane amount of money to be there with him for an hour. And he said the biggest thing coming off of that, he said the biggest thing that he got from Grant Cardone was his belief system and how he operated was from a mindset was just at a totally different level, and it changed his whole outlook. And then it wasn't just because of that, but fast forward 2-3 years later from that meeting, Alex Hormozy did the biggest, I think he did $105 million in one day from that book launch.
Yeah.
In one day
Yeah.
from that book launch. And so I've been actually, as much as I've heard and trained and coached, and I've been asking myself that question a lot, is in really taking a deep dive into what are my current limiting beliefs and how are they stopping me? What are my team's current limiting beliefs, and what is stopping us from going to that next level? And there's a really great book called 10x is 10x is greater than 2x, and it's kind of there's one line I got out of that whole book that kind of goes back to this belief system, where he talks about how when you set a 10x goal, there's really only a couple paths, but when you set a 2x goal, it's actually can be more distracting and take more energy to hit the 2x goal because there's a lot of different pathways to get there, but the end result still ends up 2x, right? Where and that's kind of like, it sounds like what experience that you had is like you were doing all of this and then I wouldn't even call it a 2x goal because it's still a phenomenal achievement, right? But essentially, because of a change in belief system, you were able to experience a 10x result compared to your previous results because of that way of thinking, which I just think is incredible. I'm actually this upcoming weekend, I'm gonna take some serious time and really, really think through what you're talking about here. And I encourage other people listening to do this. Is like, what limiting beliefs do you have that are stopping you from hitting that next goal? Who do you need to become? How do you need to think? And then who do we need to surround ourselves to help us with that? Was there anybody in particular that, like, can you think of like what tipped you from going to that bigger deal? Was it just a personal experience, or were there people around you that were encouraging you to do that? Or
no, I mean, this is the difficult thing about the space. I mean, my total addressable market, or TAM, for my advisory business is people that own 5 or more rental properties. Okay. And I looked up the numbers on that, and it's 0.07% of Americans own 5 or more rental properties. So there was not any of these people that were close to my sphere of influence that were like, because I got to the point where I was the guy, right?
Right.
I was the guy that that had all the answers, even though I didn't.
But I know what you mean. You find yourself the smartest person in the room, and it's a little scary.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you gotta change your room, because I'd much rather be the dumbest person in the room rather than the smartest person in the room.
Same here. Yep.
I mean, there's always giving back is always really important. So, I mean, you're still going to have to spend time in that room, because also teaching makes you a better learner as well. I'd have to say, you're talking about Grant Cardone. I mean, I know he's like a controversial figure, that sort of thing. But when I was in this depression funk, in this this time in my life where I should have been euphoric, I read the 10x Rule by Grant Cardone, and that really changed my perspective, because there's one thing from that book that stuck out with me, and it was like, if you make your goal big enough, almost preposterous, and you orient building all this infrastructure towards it, you may never achieve it, but you'll get pretty damn close. Whereas if you orient all of your infrastructure building around something that's smaller, then you're going to hit it, and then you're going to go through this painful process of having to reinvent yourself. And the process of reinventing yourself is very, very painful.
It is.
It's not like something that you just
painful.
it's not like you just wake up one day and as a different person. And it's not like you go on to some ayahuasca trip or something like that, and you're just reinvented, right? It comes from a very a lot of difficulty. So that was really kind of the light bulb on my head, and that's what really kind of solidified that for me. And I was like, okay, I can't wait on this anymore, because going back to this nagging traumatic experience with losing my parents, I was like, I'm just gonna turn to my dad, right? I'm just gonna turn into my dad. I need to choose a different path, and think even bigger. And also, I was getting kind of bored of it too, because I was like, regardless of whether you're closing $1 million deal or you're closing $100,000 deal, it's still the same amount of work.
Oh yeah, that's what I think. I think people don't realize, even in residential real estate, right? $500,000 property is pretty much the same amount of work as a $200,000 or $1 million property, et cetera. So I think there's a huge lesson there too. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, and also in some respects it's easier, right? Because now you have something that's it's bigger, it's big enough to get multiple people interested. Try taking on a co-listing, for instance, if you're an agent with on $100,000 deal, right? That is not going to be interesting for both of you, but take on an entire subdivision that would be a sellout of $50 million. Okay, now you can actually build a team around this goal, have an adequate division of labor, so that everybody's focusing on their one thing that they're good at. So that's the interesting thing in the bigger deal space too, because now we're putting together, the next deal we have on the horizon is a $25 million redevelopment deal. And before, when I was doing $200,000-$300,000 investment property deals, like giving up equity was kind of like, damn, I don't want to give up equity. But now we have a $25 million deal. It's like, yeah, you can afford to be more abundant, and that's in that mind space. So
Yeah, I think that's a huge lesson there too. Even for myself, when I first started bringing on investors into, so I had self-funded outside of $150,000 in the very beginning of my business in 13, 14 when I launched my real estate, my independent brokerage, and then my broker-to-broker referral program that came right after that, where I was sending leads out. It was all my own money besides like $100,000, and we had built that to close to like a $10 million revenue, annual revenue company, and I got lucky. I guess I got a little lucky that we were really good at marketing and sales. I didn't have to do it. But what was really interesting is that model had a lot of constraints to it, and it was very hard to scale. And for me, I ended up miserable, and there was a whole lot of issues with the changes in technology, et cetera, et cetera. And then I had to reinvent. I just made a decision I still have that, but it's much smaller now. And I made a decision to open up another division that's based on more of AI and building AI employees for people in the lead gen and conversion space. And now I'm actually doing a round of funding, and this conversation that you're having is really interesting one to me, because there's a lot of people that I've been talking to that have been saying the same thing, like, hey, that's not interesting enough to me right now because your vision's not big enough yet. But if you come back to me and you say like, hey, if you have a game plan to get to 100 million and not 15 million, then call me, because I'd be interested in that game plan. and so I know it's not like directly related, but I think it also goes back to this 2x versus 10x goal is like when we're doing deals, when we're putting deals together, is the vision, and is it big enough to get, is the deal, is the vision, is what you're doing, is it big enough to get the people that you want involved around you, and really assessing that. And that's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about a bigger goal, a 10x goal. So like, what does a $100 million goal look like, or a $60 million goal look like, versus developing a company that's like a 10 to $15 million goal? And what's the valuation of getting a $200 valuation? What kind of people do you attract around you? What kind of, what does that world look like? And what's really interesting is it is all the same work. It's all the same work. So even if it's not in real estate investing or doing transactions, building a business, it's the same work. It's the same amount of reps. It's the same amount of marketing that you have to do. It's the same meetings, but are you doing it with a result of a 10x goal possibility versus a 2x? So I can relate to what you're talking about in a little bit of a different world there, but working with investors to build a business now, it's really been interesting to see how they think, a lot of them.
Yeah, can we talk about Tom Golisano for a second?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. Yeah. So one of the most brilliant entrepreneurs that this world has ever seen. The maximum equity he would take in any company that he started was 30%. He always wanted other people that helped him build these companies, and he still is his mantra is attracting top talent. Even with like the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship, for instance, but giving away that 70% of equity on the deals there, so they actually feel like they have an investment into that, and that's how he's able to attract like top talent. Because if you go into it, like, let's say like 50-50, for instance, which he could have done, that sort of like having that person like measure that and those people, they're doing most of the work in the business as well, in developing it and operating it. So, I mean, I think that's another thing too, and like, and be able to like, and assembling those really, really monster teams too.
Yeah, I think that's probably like in my previous venture, that was I don't want to you can call it a mistake, but like if you're gonna build something great, you have to attract top talent. And it's amazing how much not attracting top talent can actually cost you. And I love that model because he found out, right? Like you said, the most brilliant entrepreneurs in the world. He found out that if you're going to attract top talent, they got to have a good reason to join you too, right? So it's easy enough to say, yeah, you got to go get top talent. Okay, well, how you gonna do that, right? And so that's something that I'm doing different on this project and this company than I have before in the past, is not settling for and being willing to give up more equity or more incentive to attract that top talent around me, instead of somebody that it maybe hardworking, meaning they mean well, but just not necessarily somebody that's gonna create a $50 million vision or company. So that's really awesome. I did not know that, Matt. I didn't know that's kind of was his philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%.
That's really cool. That's awesome. So for you, I know that you have a huge real estate portfolio right now. You've taught, I don't know how many people, hundreds if not thousands of people, how to do real estate, how to invest into real estate. Talk to me a little bit about why you decided to start up a community to train other investors, and what your mastermind community is about. I'm really curious to learn about that.
Yeah, so I think that when I achieved financial independence, I was like, all right, I need to develop some sort of active income. I think that everybody needs to do something active because it keeps you sharp, it keeps you in the trenches.
Yes,
in an ever-changing world. So yeah, I mean, I could have like gone sipping Mai Tais and like being miserable on a beach someplace, but that really was like that's not what that kind of like, I don't know, sloth is not like what got me to where I was. So I'd already been hardwired to want to progress. Okay. And the only way you could do that is by being active in something.
Right.
And I had been doing commercial brokerage, primarily like, smaller investment property sales, like deals that were between like, let's say like $1 million to $5 million in the Rochester area. I was buying one larger commercial deal per year, because I was like, I made a pact with myself. I was like, I don't want to be a deal junk anymore. I just want to be patient. I want to buy one deal a year, and that's it. All right. And then I was, I'd list a 24 unit townhouse complex, for instance, and I'd get, a ton of phone calls from guys who were just like myself, like in my early 20s. And within 2 seconds, I knew didn't have a clue. And I was also selling all of these like properties to like the same families, like over and over again. Like nobody knew. All right. And it wasn't my job to coach that person that was a younger like version of myself on all the preparatory stuff that they needed to do leading up to that phone call, for instance. It was my job to sell the property and earn a commission. I was getting also kind of like tired of the transactional nature of like, because like the broker they only see like a very, very small piece of the entire transaction life cycle. And I wanted to get involved like at the ground level with the real estate investor that owns 5 or more rental properties, that wants to scale into the bigger leagues, and help them do it in a fraction of the time that it took me, allowing them to achieve it in 1 year what it took me 11 years to achieve. So and also I first thought that like this thing called Go Bigger Sooner was going to be like all right, I'm just gonna have this like video course or something like that, and put out there like some dead end video course that you just like take these modules and then and what I realized when I was like ideating around this whole thing, I was coming up with all these if then statements that modeled the complexities of like the commercial transaction space. And I was like, if I keep doing this, it's going to be like 2,000 videos, and it's going to be
Yeah.
it's going to be another YouTube. And if
Yep.
if YouTube was the way to do it, then there would be no need for the product, for instance, right? So,
Hmm.
so I was like, I need to be like sleeves rolled up, like hands on, working hand in glove with my clients from where they are to where they want to go, which is their first larger investment property. And what we target is, my offer to my clients is that I'll help them land their first larger deal. It's going to add $500,000 to their net worth minimum and
Mm,
$50,000 a year in cash flow minimum in 12 months.
I love that.
So that requires a very, very intense relationship, working hand in glove with that client in order to achieve that. That was really the reason why. Plus, I wanted to curate a community of people that had already helped do this and achieve that thing, to really raise the thermostat in the room of these people. Because, like I said, when I did my first deal, which was like a bigger deal, which my transition from residential to my first larger commercial deal was like the hardest transaction of my life.
Mm,
I wanted to, to curate a community of people that are in that, so that those people wouldn't have to feel alone either. And also, like, the relationship between myself and the client, like, it's like, you may feel lonely on your own, but then, two people can feel lonely together as well. So I wanted to like shore up that whole thing holistically with a community of other investors that have done the same exact thing.
nice.
And the most amazing things have happened like since we did that. I mean, because uh, when you get on board, you earn a lifetime access to our mastermind at no additional charge. And then these guys, after developing relationships with each other over years, have started to collaborate and partner with each
Yeah.
other on huge deals,
Love
like
that.
bigger deals than I've ever done. So really democratizing that, like, wealth building. Like I said, like, I used to sell these properties to like all the same families all over, and some of them were billionaires locally. And so I was like, all right, what I'm doing right now, I can actually help like democratize the ownership of like our large community assets across, not just our community in Rochester, but across the United States. So that's really become my why around it, and it's pretty awesome to see.
That's really cool, and I love that. I love that when when the teacher has people doing the student doing bigger deals than the teacher. That's a sign of a great teacher. I love that. I love that. Well, that's cool. So the mastermind. Do you help? It doesn't matter where they do the deal. You can help them do the deal, do their first deal wherever they are in the country.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I have clients in the West Coast, East Coast, Midwest, and Southeast, um, and the I have access to a software that I use that allows me to get really great market analytics on those individual markets,
Nice.
so that I can properly advise them on sales comps and rent comps and market capitalization rates and market vacancy rates and all of those things, to allow me to properly advise them on the deals that I help them do.
Yeah, I love that. And if you're a regular listener to this podcast and you're in real estate, one of the things I talk about a lot is diversifying your income streams and taking the profits, or some of the cash flow that you have in your real estate business, and finding another way to create an income stream, whether that's an investment, partnering up with a title company, other, whatever it may be, to create other forms of income besides just getting transactions. And I think that if you are interested in investing, you should reach out to Matt and figure out how to get involved in his community. And this is a great way. One of the best ways is to, obviously, if you're in real estate, you understand real estate. So the next step is be an investor in real estate. It's one of the best ways to create another stream of income and create wealth. It amazes me how many people in real estate, Matt, when I ask them why they got involved in real estate, usually it's time, money, freedom, and to become wealthy. And what I also find is the plan that they're operating on is not going to help them achieve any one of those goals. And so I would love it if anyone in my community is watching this, and either whether you see it on YouTube or whether you see it through my email, reach out to Matt and talk to him, or who should they reach out to, Matt, if they want to? You have a website they could go to? Or what's the best way to reach out to you to check your mastermind out?
Yeah, so I mean, my like direct landing page is gobiggersooner.com.
Nice.
But also I have hundreds of hours on my YouTube channel. A lot of times like the 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 client, the prospective client has to have a like intense, ardent desire, based upon feeling like they're running in a hamster wheel, that they can't get off of, buying smaller deals that barely move the needle and that just pay them chump change. So that's generally like if that's where you are listening to this right now, then yeah, go check out that. If you're just in the exploratory stage of like what the advantages are of commercial real estate, it's not just advantageous because it's bigger. It's advantageous because it's more scalable. It's more financial outcome for the same amount of work, sometimes even less putting into it, like we alluded to earlier. And the ability to force the appreciation on commercial assets is like explosive to wealth building capabilities. Just the way the financing system works, it's completely different than residential. So definitely you can check out any of those resources.
That's awesome. That's great, Matt. I think that where I'd like to, what I'm curious about is what's next for Matt. Is it more of the same, just at a higher level, or what do you got going on right now?
Yeah, so I mean, we have a $25 million redevelopment project and some buildings we own downtown that we're in the pre-development process on. They're going to be a historic tax credit projects. That is kind of front and center for focus for our development company. And then, like I said, it's like on the acquisition side, just like one bigger deal per year, and bigger meaning like, I always want to be able to like push the envelope and bring in more people. I like dealing with like the increasing level of moving parts as well, so that I don't feel like I'm just like kind of like block and tackling, like doing the same thing over and over again. Because I think that experiencing new things and challenging yourself is also spiritually rewarding too. So that's what I'm on now. And then there's also a project that we're rolling out nationwide in terms of acquisition. Of larger apartment deals across the country. Because there's one thing that myself and also my clients deal with is that you have owners of large apartment deals that have owned them forever, have no basis left on them, and they have a huge unrealized capital gains exposure to them. So we've developed an acquisition framework for those people to essentially sell their buildings without having to do a 1031 exchange.
That's really cool.
And without having to roll their proceeds into a Delaware statutory trust or a deferred sales trust. So that's something that we're working on rolling out with a national family office too. So be on the lookout for that too.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And one of the things I like to do is just ask I don't want to ask the classic question like, hey, what's one thing you could give to the audience, but what I do want to ask you is like, if somebody really wants to go down the path that you're going down and you had to do it all over again, would you have done it different, or how? Like maybe just talk a little bit about that, and if you would have done it different, what would you have done?
I would have not done it alone. But I mean, we also have to look at, okay, we're talking about hindsight being 2020. Even if I had that person that was a mentor advising me, like I may have been too hard-headed to even take their advice to begin with. So I think that the positions where I've been, where I've actually like gotten help, which is much later on in my career, have been in areas where I've been like, okay, this is like, I'm experiencing a lot of pain right now and a lot of friction. So there has to be an easier way to do this. So probably getting help before you really need it, because there's people that are out there, regardless of what you want to do, that that they can bolt on decades worth of battle hardened experience to your journey and allow you to accelerate your pace to the next level and with less pain, because the pain that I've gone through not knowing what I'm doing I mean, I've seen literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in just cash just set on fire. But also not having like that confidence and crystal clear clarity of where I was going. I've missed out on several millions of dollars worth of opportunities, just to, opportunity cost, because I didn't have the confidence in doing so. So that's probably what I would have done differently. But like I said, caveat, I'm like borderline, like a little bit better than a Neanderthal, but I probably would have just been, no, you don't know what you're talking about, because I know I rejected advice from my dad all the time. That was sound advice, and I only knew it was sound when I actually went through the suck.
Yeah, it's human nature is interesting like that. Is like how many things sometimes we just have to experience before we understand the weight of it. And I think that while there's this combination of just having to do that and take massive, take action, I personally found is that if you have a proven model and somebody that helps you understand the psychology behind the model while you're trying to figure it out, that's usually the winning formula, And so I think that's some really, really excellent advice. And just actually reflecting on that, some of the massive mistakes that I've made is I either didn't listen to somebody. three big buckets, like $1 million mistakes that I've made. Didn't listen to somebody when they told me what was probably going to happen. That was number one. Number two, listening to somebody that was well intended but did not have full scope of what I was actually trying to accomplish, and or they had ulterior motives in their advice. And then the third one is just not actually really taking action before really understanding the psychology of how the model worked. And I think you got to take action, you got to understand, you got to do those things. But I think if I reflect on the three things that have cost me millions of dollars, it's been one of those at some point, one point or time. But on the other side, on the other side of the successes, that's when I've been the most successful too. When I've really taken the time to understand the model, the psychology behind the model, and put the right people in place, the right team in place to execute on the model. Then I've been successful too. So I think that's some great wisdom there. And Matt, I really appreciate you taking the time and telling your story on how you did what you did. Hopefully, I know it's going to inspire some people to think differently, which is the whole point of the Renegade CEO podcast. And I'm looking forward to getting this out to my community. I appreciate your time today.
Hey, thanks, Isaiah.